Right next to isekai, the death game slash battle royale genre has to be one of the roughest anime genres around. There aren't a lot of good ones out there, and the ones that are always seem to be so absurdly bad that they end up looping around into being good. They somehow manage to be entertaining enough in a way that you will no doubt have fun watching. One thing I can say for sure is that the genre isn't exactly boring. Case in point, Future Diary. I'd argue that this is the face of death games and was a lot of people's introductions to the genre, and while it is really bad, it's still really fun to watch, leaning into its edgy absurdity in a way that no other death game has been able to. But what happens when you make a death game, strip away all the edge, mind games and camp, as well as make it CGI? Well, you get Kamierabi God.app. Kamierabi, and yes, this is what it actually looks like, is an anime original created by, and this genuinely surprised me, Yoko Taro of all people, the same man behind the Nier and Drakengard series. Though it's to be noted that he wasn't actually a main writer, with character designs by Soul Eater's Atsushi Okubo, which you wouldn't really be able to tell because of the CGI until you see this guy. There were a lot of prominent people behind the series. Unfortunately, that doesn't exactly guarantee the series will be bound for success. Kamierabi follows the story of our main character, Ono Goro, as he and a bunch of other middle schoolers who, after getting their wish granted, are given special powers and thrown into a death game where they have to kill each other, with the last one standing becoming the new god of their world. Sounds pretty familiar, huh? That's right, this is basically Timu Future Diary minus all the stuff that made Future Diary fun. It's an incredibly jarring series because of how much it squanders its premise, having the characters bumble around without any real plot progression being made until the final 2 episodes of the first season. That's right, the anime was able to bag 2 12-episode seasons, but I could only manage to stomach the first, and this is because of the way the anime structures itself. It breaks things down into mini arcs that last an episode or two, bringing whatever little story progression there was to a halt to focus on our main characters dealing with a candidate that doesn't end up dying when it's all over. Episode 1 and 2 act as our introduction to the series. Goro gets the app telling him he's been chosen to be a candidate and needs to make a wish. He doesn't take it seriously and wishes to fool around with his classmate Sawa. Somehow his wish comes true and he jerks it right in front of her. But turns out she's actually a candidate too, with the power to turn her small knife into a really big knife. We also get to see what Goro's power is, which is basically hacks. He's able to alter causality and change reality, but at the cost of him suffering negative karma. He's able to beat Sawa by having satellite debris pierce her, but feels bad about that and alters reality to bring her back to life. The drawback of this being that his mother is now an alcoholic who hates him even more, and he's treated as an outcast in his school. We're also introduced to Akitsu, Goro's only friend who is also a candidate and is also the most animated character in the series. His power lets him see 5 seconds into the future. The 3 of them form a truce for the time being, and this is when we learn a bit about the rules. The candidates can use their phones to see their ranks as well as other nearby candidates. It also lets them channel their powers so long as it's on their person. They really go through great lengths to tell us how important their phones are in this death game. Then they are attacked by other candidates in this stupid getup with the power to create green flames. They defeat them but aren't able to kill them. After this, in episode 3, Akitsu forces Goro to fight him. Turns out he lied about what his power actually was. His real power is basically time control. Not only can he send his consciousness forward or backwards in time, he can also rewind time, as well as summon people and objects that existed in that space in the past. It's just as busted as Goro's without the negative side effects. He forces Goro to fight him and loses because Goro is just that broken. In his final words, he says how this was the only way things could play out because he's looked into different timelines and him dying and Goro becoming God are the only way to get the good ending. I call this bullshit. The writers realized that they made Akitsu way too powerful. With powers like that, especially to rewind time, he could easily trivialize every single threat they encountered, and so they had to write him out of the story. And to further prove my point on this, later on in the series when the characters form a little group, they decide that hey, let's just have one of us become God and have them bring us all back to life and grant everyone else's wishes, instantly eliminating the tension and drama that would have come from the last few standing. Episode 4 and 5 now have the characters investigating a rumor in their school about a person who is said to be able to grant anyone's wish. Episode 4 is the worst out of this, but we get introduced to 3 new characters. Nojima, the science freak who is obviously their attacker from before, Koki, the student council president and just a generally good guy, and Tatsuya, a shy boy with a bit of an unnerving personality. Nothing really happens in episode 4 to be honest, but episode 5 rounds up the mini arc. Goro and Nojima find out that the source of these rumors are from Tatsuya, who is a candidate with the power to control people's minds and create a cult from it, using his followers to chase down our little crew. They confront him trying to use the old talk no jutsu, and it works. However, Tatsuya regrets what he's done and withdraws from the death game, which in turn cuts him in two, killing him permanently. The strange thing is, his power now gets transferred to Koki, making him a candidate too. A bit unfair because it's not like he got a wish, but Koki has no interest in fighting and soon becomes friends with Goro. Episode 6 is another episode that doesn't really push the plot, but it's one of my favorites for what it's worth. Goro accidentally gets 2 tickets to see his favorite idol and so invites Koki to come along. The two eventually split when Goro has to use the bathroom but can't seem to because every single stall is full. This is because of his bad karma by the way, and sneaks into the event hall to find a bathroom. It's in there he overhears a conversation between his idol, Io, and her manager who wants to cancel the show because they got a bomb threat. Goro pops in offering to help, but this is when Ral, Goro's tiny demon fairy thing that helps him channel his power, reveals that she's a candidate too. I mean, are we really surprised? The average NPC model looks like this, so any character that does have a model, 100% of the time becomes important. The bomb goes off and the two try to get out of the place but encounter this, red guy who is a crazy fan and has been behind the bombing. Io loses her shit at the sight of this and reveals that he's the one who killed her. But wait, how is she alive then? This is when the anime reveals that this isn't actually Io, but this. Okay. I get that this is supposed to be a serious reveal, but watching this anime girl turn into a nameless, faceless blue NPC is comedy gold. This is where the series locking itself into CGI really comes to bite it in the ass. The anime CGI for the most part isn't so bad. When you get to experience it in the first episode, it can be a bit uncanny, especially when watching them in movement, but then the more you watch, the more it begins to grow on you. The animation is in no way bad at all. The character models are well done and their movements aren't clunky. Where it really does shine is during the fight scenes. The special effects they use to spice up these moments are really well done and add a lot more dynamism to the anime. Hell, they even use impact frames. But despite that, you can really tell how on budget the production team was. Character models only have one fit, that being their really awful school uniforms which they wear everywhere, even to sleep. And the background characters are all grayed out, making the ones that do matter stick out a lot more. And this is why this scene is so funny to me. They didn't see a reason to give this guy a proper model because he's only really shown up for one episode and that's it. Respect to them for doing this with a straight face though. But why is this guy actually Io? Turns out, a year ago, the real Io had killed herself because of the red guy who had been stalking and harassing her life. So Blue Guy, who was such a big fan of Io, discovered her body and at that moment wished to be her in order to save her. So his ability lets him perfectly mimic anyone, even copying their mannerisms and memories, truly becoming the person he mimics. And he's been living as Io since her death. Also, he has the power to summon spares for some reason. Anyway, Goro is able to stop Io from killing the red guy and befriending her in the process. But it isn't all smiles. His power is finally taking a toll on his body, causing him to pass out. Episode 7 opens up with a flashback of Sawa's childhood. She didn't grow up in a normal household. Her parents were kind of crazy, imposing all sorts of crazy and oppressive rules she and her younger brother had to follow, and if they didn't, they'd face solitary confinement without food or water as punishment. But her flashback is cut short when she's informed of Goro's condition and goes to the hospital to see him. There she meets Koki and Aral, who up until this point only Goro could see her, but for some reason more and more candidates have been able to see her. It's strange, but my guess is this is also a result of Goro's frequent use of his powers. The only reason Sawa showed up was cause she wanted to spawn kill, but Rao threatens her, and this is when we see that Sawa is surprisingly really scared of dying and storms off. She then runs into Nojima, who talks all mysterious like. Mind you, Sawa doesn't know she's a candidate. Nojima is able to trick her into falling through a portal and she wounds up back in her house, face to face with her younger self. She is really shaken up by this, because not only is she trying to wrap her head around things, she's in her childhood home. To make things even more unsettling, we hear her brother's faint voice coming from the punishment room. She busts it open, but nobody's there. This is when we hear her parents come back home, and all of a sudden, the memories start flooding in, revealing to us that she actually killed her parents for all the abuse that ended up killing her brother. So you can piece together that her wish is most likely to bring her brother back. After killing her parents a second time, she's able to leave that space, meeting Nojima and a girl in a wheelchair, Ryo. They fight and Nojima burns her to a crisp, just about killing her, but in a last-ditch attempt, Sawa stabs herself, regenerating her body, reverting her to her child self, and making her stronger. Sawa's power is one that lets her use any kind of flesh, preferably dead, as a catalyst to make her weapon bigger and stronger. So to get the best use out of her power, she basically has to off herself every time. Their fight gets interrupted by someone else who joins in, taking away the girl on the wheelchair who calls him brother. They are Ryo and Kyo. The two act as the season's final antagonists in a way, and before they leave, Kyo kills Nojima. Haha, but not really, cause she is fine the next episode. Who would have seen that coming? What follows is what I think is the worst arc in the whole season. Goro is out of the hospital and we're introduced to a woman, Mitsuko, whose power lets her teleport to anywhere she can envision and comes to the main party with help of dealing with another candidate who has kidnapped her friend. The party has to deal with a guy whose power is literally spreading misinformation from his super cool, high-tech gaming pod. Like he's able to alter news and information, even able to create fake videos to help push his agenda. And what does he use this incredibly terrifying power to do? Harass a model who refuses to go out with him, and a mangaka who isn't making the story the way he wants. God, what a fucking loser. What makes this arc bad is how poorly it's woven into the main story. Like, we're given the impression that this loser, Keita, is part of the same team as Ryo, Kyo, and Nojima. So he must be a big deal, but like, it never feels that way and the story is made to stop just so we can get him out of the way. And the way they do this is by first accidentally teleporting into the home of the mangaka he's harassing to have him make a manga chapter that will act as a medium they'll use to teleport directly to the guy. And that works. But the real icing on this awful cake is that the guy, who's a real bad guy by the way, doesn't even die by the end of it. How she deals with him is by teleporting him all the way to Antarctica, presumably to freeze to death. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. With that out of the way, the season's climax is underway, the sibling duo from before taking front and center. This is also where a lot of the lore and reveals get crammed into. They first go after Koki, Sawa, and Nojima, and we see Koki finally use his power to kill Kyo, but then he suddenly comes back, taking them all out via impaling through the chest again. The anime really wants you to think they're dead, but nah, they're back again in the next episode without any real explanation as to how they survived that. After this, we're back to Goro and Io who are trying to find the others, and after 10 episodes, we finally have someone asking questions about the death game and being suspicious. Io can't help but wonder why exactly they were chosen, what the nature of the games are, and what does it even mean to be God. Though her questions are kind of pointless since nobody can really answer those questions. They get interrupted when literal bodies start falling from the sky along with the appearance of what appears to be a moon, but is actually a giant mass of bodies. This is apparently the work of the siblings. Ryo has the power to create parallel worlds, and Kyo has the power to control, shape, and merge anything that happens in these worlds, as well as destroy them. Side note, I need to talk about how unfair and unbalanced these powers are in a death game. Like, we have people who can control time, summon parallel worlds, and alter reality, and then we have a character whose power is basically just big knife. Realistically, how are they supposed to fare against these people? It means that a lot of these characters were set up by whoever's orchestrating all this to fail, and for some reason, it rubs me the wrong way. Anyway, the giant mass of bodies isn't a threat for too long, cause Goro is able to get rid of it in the same episode it appears. Feels like a waste of tension, but oh well. However, Ral had been apprehensive of having him use his powers because the drawbacks are getting worse. Not only is he now colorblind, but he has also lost all sense of taste, smell, and feeling, and doing this will only lead him closer to death. Anyway, after getting rid of that, he goes on to confront the siblings. This is when we learn of their backstory. The two had always been together. Kyo grew up suffering from an incurable disease that was slowly killing him, his father desperately trying to find a cure, but not long after he's taken to a hospital due to his worsening condition, leaving Ryo all alone. We then find out that their dad was actually the one who developed the God app, or at least that's what it looks like, but what we're shown is the app's early stage of development. Rio discovers this and freaks out, the app kind of resonating with her. She runs up from their home desperately wanting to see her brother, only to accidentally run into traffic, becoming another victim of truck-con. It's in that moment that the app activates, asking her to make a wish, her wish being to have her brother back, and so he does come back, though the accidents left her permanently disabled. So what happens is that the kill with her is one from a parallel world, and every time he dies, he's immediately replaced with another him. Their goal is to create a world where they can live in peace, but can't because Rio cannot exist in these worlds, so they want to use Goro's power to fix that. Goro understands but doesn't agree with what they're doing, or rather, what Kyo is doing. A big theme about this anime is how unfair the world is. Every one of our main characters have been victims of the unfair world in one way or the other. Kyo wants to get rid of this unfairness, however, Goro argues that despite all the unfairness, people are still able to carry on and grow. He's an example of this. It's through this unfairness that he's found good company. And so he uses his power to heal her so the two can finally talk it out. But because she can now see, Kyo is slowly fading away. His whole existence is that of a Schrodinger's cat kind of case, whereby because his sister couldn't observe him, he could exist, but now that she can, he's slowly starting to fade away because the original Kyo is dead after all. It's a weird explanation, but I guess it just works. The two don't really get time to talk as they are all teleported back to the surface, and they immediately get jumped by the masses who think they're the cause of all of this. Kyo, as well as we the audience, are left to watch as a faceless mob stomp on a young girl half to death. Goro tries to help but can't even move anymore due to his power. He tries to ask Io for help too, but she can't even remember him. Also another price of his power. The rest of the main party arrive and they too can't seem to remember Goro at all. Sawa, thinking he's one of the reasons behind all the pandemonium, tries to kill him right there, but Ral steps in to take the hit. She goes off about all their selfishness, how they are unfit to be God, and this is when we get a rather shocking reveal. Throughout the series, there had been the mystery of who or what Ral was, and why she was overprotective of Goro. And earlier on, there was the reveal that Goro never did have a true wish, so why was he in the games in the first place? We're led to believe that his wish from episode 1 is what threw him into this death game, but it turns out that was never the case. He had just forgotten what his true wish was. And this is when we find out that his true wish was to be able to grant other people's wishes, stemming from his desire to be wanted by other people. He grew up in an abusive household with parents that wanted nothing to do with him, and he didn't have any friends either. He thought that maybe if people could entrust their wishes to him, they would want him around. And Ral was one of them, but she wasn't just any random person. She was the aborted child of Goro's mother's affair. And the only reason she's here is because she wished to be born. Wow. That was quite the heavy reveal that I think was handled kind of well. I don't know, it's a bit weird because of the implications, but I won't expand on that. This culminates in her using herself as the ultimate prize for Goro to use his power one last time to grant his wish. And so he awakens, but something is different about him. He seems almost disconnected, going on to erase everyone nearby out of existence. At first I thought he went crazy, but looking at this scene again, he's actually granting everyone's wishes and presumably sending them to a world where their deepest desires came true. As he goes on to blip the rest of the main cast, Teleporting Lady shows up, accidentally drops her phone, and reveals to us what's inside. A rather strange component. However, just as Goro is about to blip Rio, she wakes up, declaring, "My wish belongs to me," and sends him off to a parallel world, seemingly resetting everything with slight differences, bringing an end to the season. Okay, crazy way to end the season, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't effective. But do these last episodes make up for the almost low tension and directionless 10 episodes that come before it? Hell no! It was a hard watch because the plot felt like it wasn't going anywhere, adding characters and arcs that didn't really push the story anyway whatsoever. It now leaves these last 2 episodes feeling like it was all just set up for the real story that takes place in the second season. It did have moments where it shone, but its light wasn't bright enough to make up for the lackluster story through and through. At the same time, I can't really hate the series for what it's trying to do. This is kind of what Yoko Taro does. If you've played the Nier or Drakengard series, hell, even the discontinued gacha games Say No Alice, you'll be very familiar with this kind of story structure that seems unassuming at first, but flips things on its head as more and more context is added later. But in the case of this anime, it doesn't quite stick the landing and leaves you feeling a bit dissatisfied. There's still a second season that most likely answers all these questions, but I don't think I'm going to cover that. That is, unless you guys really want to see a video on it. If so, let me know by dropping a like on this video and maybe a comment too. 100 likes and I'll cover the second season. But that's it for this video. As always, this has been your very favorite slice of bread. Stay toasty.